A modern hospital cycles through 80 patient rooms every 24 hours. Food trays from the cafeteria sit in corridors between delivery and pickup. Janitorial carts roll past open wounds, central venous catheters, and patients whose immune systems have been chemically suppressed so their bodies will accept a new liver, a new kidney, a new heart. The cockroach complaint rate at accredited American hospitals hovers near zero. We would assume the answer is industrial pesticide, sprayed through the corridors at night while the building empties out. Hospitals cannot do that. There are intravenous lines feeding directly into bloodstreams. There are infants in neonatal intensive care, weighing less than 3 pounds. There are surgical instruments laid out under sterile drapes. And it would not matter if they could. The German cockroach in 2024 is functionally resistant to almost every chemical class on the market. A study led by Dr. Michael Scharf at Purdue University, published in Scientific Reports in 2019, took field-collected cockroaches, exposed them to 3 different pesticide classes rotated over a single growing season, and recorded populations actually increasing under treatment. The cockroaches were not dying. They were thriving inside the chemical regimen designed to kill them. The author of that study called the conventional spray approach functionally bankrupt. So American hospitals built 5 layers instead. Each one attacks the cockroach physically, biologically, or behaviorally rather than chemically. One is a $2 powder applied inside the wall voids of every patient floor, derived from a mineral salt first isolated in 1702 by a French-German chemist named Wilhelm Homburg. It strips the waxy coating off a cockroach's exoskeleton and leaves it to dehydrate. It has been documented killing every German cockroach in test environments since 1922, with zero resistance development across more than a century of continuous use. One is the architecture of the patient room itself, engineered down to the millimeter, so a cockroach has nowhere to shelter and no surface to follow. The cove base where the floor meets the wall was not invented for cleaning. It was invented for entomology. One is something the hospital does to the air that drops the relative humidity below the threshold at which a cockroach egg case can hatch. And a janitor enforces that threshold every shift without ever knowing it is part of a pest control system. One is an unmarked surveillance device hidden in plain sight behind every toilet, under every sink, and behind every refrigeration unit in the building. Most staff walk past one of these things 20 times a day. Almost none of them recognize it for what it is. And one traces back to a 1979 lawsuit in Boston where a 6-year-old surgical patient was bitten on the eyelid by a cockroach while she slept in her hospital bed. The settlement reshaped how every accredited American hospital now builds its kitchen. The reason all 5 layers exist traces back further still, to a Hungarian doctor in a Viennese obstetric ward in 1847. A man named Ignaz Semmelweis, who realized something nobody else could see. The hospital itself was the source of the disease. That story is where this starts. In May of 1847, the maternal mortality rate in the first obstetric division of Vienna General Hospital was running above 18%. Women were dying of childbed fever within hours of giving birth. Semmelweis noticed that physicians moved directly from autopsy rooms to the delivery ward without washing their hands. He ordered every doctor to scrub with a chlorinated lime solution before touching a patient. Within 1 month, the mortality rate dropped from 18% to 2%. Within 6 months, it fell to under 1%. The Viennese medical establishment rejected his findings. Semmelweis was eventually committed to an asylum, where he died in 1865 after being beaten by guards. 20 years later, Louis Pasteur and Joseph Lister confirmed everything he had said. The lesson the modern hospital took from Semmelweis is the lesson that frames the entire system we are about to walk through. We do not fight the disease after it appears. We engineer the conditions that allowed it to arrive in the first place. Pest control inside a hospital follows the exact same logic. We do not spray the cockroach. We make sure the building is hostile to its existence before the cockroach ever crawls in. Layer 1. Stand at the doorway of any modern American patient room and look at the floor. The vinyl tile does not stop at the wall. It curves upward in a smooth, continuous arc, fused to the lower portion of the wall surface, sealed with a heat-welded thermoplastic strip. There is no corner. There is no seam. There is no gap into which a cockroach can wedge its flattened body. This detail is called integral cove base. It costs roughly 4 times what conventional baseboard installation costs, and it is required in every healthcare environment in the United States, accredited by the Joint Commission and licensed by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. The reason is not aesthetic. It is biological. A German cockroach can compress its body to fit through a gap of 1.5 millimeters. That is less than the thickness of a credit card. The standard 1/4-inch gap left between conventional baseboard and floor is a 6-lane motorway by comparison. Cove base eliminates the motorway entirely. There is nowhere for the cockroach to shelter at the wall-floor junction, which is the single most common harborage zone in any structure on Earth. Entomologists at the University of Kentucky measured cockroach harborage preference across 47 residential structures in the 1990s and found that more than 60% of all detected harborages were located within 10 centimeters of the wall-floor junction. Look up next. The ceiling in a critical care environment is not a drop tile system. It is solid sheet rock or aluminum, taped and sealed at every joint. Drop ceilings are forbidden in operating theaters, recovery rooms, and intensive care units precisely because the void above a drop tile is a 5-star hotel for cockroaches, mice, and silverfish. A nurse standing in a surgical scrub room is standing inside a sealed envelope. There is no ceiling void above her. There is no wall void beside her. There is no baseboard gap below her. The architecture itself denies harborage. The plumbing penetrations are sealed with a fire-rated silicone-based compound that hardens within 30 minutes and resists cockroach mandible pressure. The electrical outlet boxes are flush-fit with gasketed cover plates. The cabinet bases are toe-kicked at a precise angle that prevents debris accumulation underneath. Every door is on an automatic closer rated for under 4 seconds. The doors themselves have brush sweeps along the bottom, the same kind used in commercial kitchens, rated for a maximum gap of 3 millimeters at the floor line. We cannot build a hospital room in our living room, but we can apply the principle. Inspect the bottom 4 inches of every exterior wall in our home. Look behind the dishwasher, look behind the refrigerator, look under the sink, look where pipes enter the wall from the basement. We will find gaps we have walked past for years. Seal them with copper mesh packed tight and covered with a silicone caulk. A package of copper mesh at the hardware store runs around $8. A tube of silicone runs about $5. For $13 and one Saturday afternoon, we have eliminated the most common harborage zones in our home. That is layer 1 of 5. Layer 2. This is the layer the title promised. Run a finger along the kick plate at the base of any patient room wall in a properly maintained hospital. Reach behind the bed headboard. Look into the small gap where the bathroom plumbing comes through the drywall. Pull a wall plate off a powered-down electrical outlet on an empty patient floor. We would barely see it, but it is there. A fine, almost imperceptible white dust, applied into every wall void, dusted into the seam where the bed frame meets the floor, blown into the gap behind the cabinet toe kick, deposited along the inside top edge of every electrical box on the floor. That dust is boric acid, or in newer installations, a refined version called amorphous silica gel, sold under the brand names Simexa and Drione. Boric acid was first isolated in 1702 by Wilhelm Homberg, a French-German chemist working at the Académie des Sciences in Paris. He extracted it from borax and from the mineral springs of Tuscany, calling it sal sedativum, the calming salt. For 2 centuries, it sat on shelves as a mild antiseptic. Hospitals washed open wounds with dilute boric acid solution. Pharmacists sold it for eye irritation. Nurses dusted it onto bed linens to control bed bugs and lice in the era before DDT. Then, in 1922, USDA Chief Entomologist Leland O. Howard documented in Department Bulletin 1153 that hospital wards using boric acid powder as a routine antiseptic on floors and counters maintained no measurable cockroach populations. Wards, which had switched to the newer chlorinated chemical disinfectants, developed visible infestations within months. Boric acid had been killing the cockroaches the whole time. Nobody had noticed because nobody was looking. The mechanism, confirmed across the 20th century by entomology departments at the University of Florida, Purdue, and the University of Kentucky, is purely physical. When a cockroach walks across boric acid, the fine particles cling electrostatically to its body. The roach is fastidious. It will groom itself constantly, ingesting the powder in the process. The boric acid simultaneously disrupts its digestive system from the inside and abrades the waxy lipid layer that forms the outer surface of its exoskeleton. Without that waxy coating, the roach cannot retain water. Within 72 hours, it dies of dehydration and internal damage. The cockroach cannot evolve resistance to dehydration. There is no enzyme to upregulate. There is no metabolic pathway to detoxify the compound. There is no receptor to mutate. The gene mutations that allow modern German cockroaches to walk through pyrethroid sprays and survive are biologically meaningless against a physical desiccant. Even more critically, there is what entomologists call the cascade effect. A cockroach contaminated with boric acid returns to the harborage, the dense crack or wall void where the colony nests in piles, sometimes 100 individuals deep. Other cockroaches groom the contaminated individual, transfer the dust onto themselves, and within days the entire harborage collapses. A single dusting application can take down 100 cockroaches over the course of several weeks. Researchers at the University of Kentucky measured this in controlled lab populations. Mortality at the harborage level reached 98% within 21 days of a single perimeter application. The newer version, Simexa, is made of amorphous silica gel rather than boric acid. It works on the same physical principle, abrading the waxy cuticle and dehydrating the insect. But the silica particles are even finer, bond even more strongly to the cuticle, and remain active in dry environments for up to 10 years undisturbed. A 4-ounce bottle of Simexa costs around $13 and treats an entire home multiple times. A 4-ounce can of plain boric acid costs less than $2 at any hardware store. A hand bellows duster, sometimes called a puffer, runs around $8. $2 of powder and $8 of equipment is the exact same defense being deployed inside the wall voids of every accredited patient floor in the country. The hospital does not pay $2 because they buy bulk. We pay $2 because we buy retail. The physics is identical. Application matters. A thin, barely visible film of dust is far more effective than a thick layer. Cockroaches will walk through a fine deposit. They will walk around a visible pile. Puff it into wall voids behind outlet covers after killing the breaker at the panel. Puff it into the gap behind the dishwasher. Puff it under the refrigerator, paying particular attention to the warm compartment around the motor. Puff it along the inside top edge of cabinet toe kicks where we would never see it. Apply it where the cockroach travels, not where we can see it. That is layer 2 of 5. That is the $2 secret the title promised. That is the layer the entire conventional pest control industry would prefer we never learn, because a $2 bottle that lasts 10 years and resists every form of cockroach evolutionary defense undermines a $300 monthly service contract. Layer 3. Cockroaches are tropical insects. The German cockroach, the species responsible for the overwhelming majority of structural infestations in the developed world, evolved in the warm, humid environments of Southeast Asia. Its egg case, called an ootheca, requires a relative humidity above 40% to hatch successfully. Below 35%, the eggs desiccate inside the case and the embryos die before emergence. Walk into any modern American hospital and the air will feel slightly dry. Surgical suites are typically held between 30 and 60% relative humidity per ASHRAE standard 170, but patient rooms and corridors trend toward the lower end of that range. The HVAC system is engineered to maintain this. Industrial dehumidifiers run continuously, pulling moisture out of the air to protect sensitive electronic medical equipment, prevent mold growth on surgical drapes, and keep instrument trays sterile. Cockroach eggs cannot survive in that environment. Adult cockroaches will tolerate dry air briefly, but they cannot reproduce. A breeding colony requires the warm, humid microclimate of a leaky pipe, a damp wall void, or a sweating cold water line. Hospital maintenance protocols address every one of those microclimates. Janitorial staff are trained to report any standing water within 15 minutes. Maintenance technicians repair plumbing leaks as priority work orders. A dripping condensate line under an ice machine in a typical American restaurant might sit unaddressed for weeks. The same drip in a hospital is fixed before the next shift change. The janitor is enforcing pest control with every mop and every wet floor sign, and almost none of them know it. They are removing the microclimate the cockroach requires to reproduce. They are not killing the insect. They are eliminating the nursery. For our home, the principle scales. Run a dehumidifier in the basement during humid months. Fix every leak within 48 hours. Wipe condensation off cold water pipes. Pull the refrigerator out twice a year and check the drip pan underneath. Replace the gasket around the dishwasher door if it shows water staining. A consumer-grade compressor dehumidifier runs around $200 and pays for itself in pest reduction alone if our basement currently sits above 45% humidity. A simple hygrometer to monitor it costs $10 at any hardware store. That is layer 3 of 5. Layer 4. In every accredited American hospital, hidden in plain sight, are small flat cardboard rectangles called sticky monitors or glue boards. They sit behind toilets, inside utility closets, under sinks, behind refrigeration equipment in the kitchen, on the floor of every supply room, and inside the cabinet under every nursing station counter. They are unmarked. They look like discarded packaging. Most staff walk past them every single day without noticing they exist. These are surveillance devices. Each monitor is coated on the upper surface with a non-toxic sticky resin. Any insect that crawls across it gets trapped. Pest management technicians inspect every monitor on a weekly schedule, documenting species, count, and location. A single German cockroach trapped behind an ice machine on the 3rd floor is a flag. The team applies boric acid or Cemexa dust into the surrounding voids, repairs any leaks within 10 feet, and re-inspects in 48 hours. This approach is called Integrated Pest Management, or IPM. It was first formalized as a discipline in the 1950s by entomologists at the University of California, Davis, in response to growing cotton pest resistance to DDT. The modern hospital version was refined in the 1990s after the Joint Commission added IPM compliance to its accreditation criteria. The standard now requires every accredited American hospital to maintain a written pest management plan, perform monthly facility-wide inspections, and document every chemical application down to the active ingredient and the square footage treated. The point of the monitor is not to kill cockroaches. The point is to detect them within days of arrival. The hospital is not waiting until staff and patients see cockroaches. By the time we see a cockroach during daylight hours, the population has already exceeded 100 individuals because cockroaches are nocturnal, and we only see them in the open when their numbers have pushed the weakest out of the harborage. The monitor catches the first one before any of that happens. A pack of 12 glue boards at the hardware store costs about $10. Place them behind the refrigerator, under the kitchen sink, in the bathroom cabinet, in the laundry room, behind the toilet, and in the garage near any food storage. Check them every Sunday morning. A single trapped cockroach is the signal to dust boric acid into the surrounding voids and find the moisture source within a 10-foot radius. We have just installed the same early warning system that protects a 600-bed medical center for less than the price of one takeout meal. That is layer 4 of 5. Layer 5, hospital kitchens. In 1979, a 6-year-old surgical patient at a major Boston teaching hospital was bitten on the eyelid by a cockroach during the night. The bite became infected. The patient required additional surgery to debride the wound and prevent scarring. Her family sued. The settlement was reported in the regional newspapers, but the details of the structural reforms it triggered were not. What changed quietly across the next decade was the design of the institutional kitchen itself. American hospital kitchens built after 1985 are constructed to standards that would be unrecognizable to a restaurant operator. Every food preparation surface is stainless steel with welded seams. There is no caulk. There is no rubber gasket. There is no decorative tile. Stainless steel is the only surface a cockroach cannot grip with the tarsal pads on its feet at the correct vertical angle. It is too smooth and too steep. Floor drains are fitted with brass strainer baskets that block insect ingress while allowing water to drain. Walk-in coolers are kept below 38 degrees Fahrenheit, which suspends cockroach metabolic activity completely. Dry goods storage rooms are kept below 30% relative humidity. Food is rotated on a 48-hour first-in, first-out cycle, and the inventory log is reviewed every Friday. There is no expired product accumulating in the back of a shelf. Trash is removed 3 times per shift. The dumpster sits at least 50 feet from any exterior door on a concrete pad with a tight-fitting lid. The receiving dock is inspected before every delivery. Any cardboard box showing signs of cockroach activity, smearing, fecal staining, or egg case attachment is rejected at the truck before it crosses the threshold. Corrugated cardboard is the single most common vehicle by which cockroaches enter institutional buildings. Hospitals know this. They reject the cardboard. A cockroach gets into a building one of 3 ways. It walks in through a structural gap. It rides in on a delivery. It flies in on the rare summer nights warm enough to take to the air. The hospital kitchen has closed all 3 doors. That is layer 5 of 5. 5 layers. Architecture that denies harborage, a $2 powder that kills by physics. Humidity control that prevents reproduction, surveillance that detects within days. Kitchen design that eliminates the entry routes. No layer requires a single conventional pesticide. None of them depend on chemistry the cockroach can evolve around. And yet, modern hospitals do still occasionally have cockroaches. In April of 2023, a routine inspection at a county hospital in Southern California found German cockroaches in a kitchen preparation area after a refrigeration condensate leak went unreported for 3 days. The hospital was cited and corrective action was implemented within a week. In 2019, a federal inspection report on a Veterans Affairs hospital in New Jersey documented cockroach activity in 3 patient bathrooms, following a major plumbing renovation that breached the wall voids and was not properly resealed before reopening. In 2017, a CDC outbreak investigation of a multi-drug-resistant Klebsiella infection in a Pennsylvania intensive care unit identified cockroaches as a likely mechanical vector after a single insect was trapped in a glue monitor, and laboratory testing confirmed it was carrying the resistant strain on its cuticle. The 5 layers do not make a hospital immune. They make it fast. A budget facility might miss an infestation for weeks or months. A properly run accredited hospital finds it in days, sometimes hours. That is the difference. The cockroach is not eliminated. The cockroach is detected, contained, and resolved before it ever reaches a patient. Every layer scales to a home. Copper mesh and silicone for sealing entry points, around $15. a $2 bottle of boric acid, and an $8 bellows duster, $10 total. A small compressor dehumidifier, anywhere from $40 for a desiccant unit suitable for a single bathroom to $200 for a basement model. A 12-pack of glue monitors for surveillance, $10. Stainless steel mesh strainer baskets for floor and sink drains, $4 each. A simple hygrometer to monitor humidity, $10. Total cost to build the entire hospital-grade defense in our home runs under $50 on the high end, under $25 on the low end. The same physics protecting a 600-bed academic medical center, protecting our kitchen. The cockroach does not care that the building is smaller. The dehydration mechanism is identical. The harborage denial is identical. The early warning monitoring is identical. The single bottle of boric acid is the cheapest, most reliable insecticide ever documented in entomological literature, and it costs less than a cup of takeaway coffee. There are two products worth mentioning that almost never show up in pest control guides, but make a measurable difference. A small ultraviolet flashlight, about $12, will reveal cockroach fecal staining that is invisible under normal light. Cockroach droppings fluoresce blue-green under UV. Sweep the cabinet under the sink, behind the toilet, and along the baseboard at night with the lights off. We will find evidence of activity we have walked past for years. And a set of cockroach pheromone lures, around $8 for a 6-pack, can be placed inside the glue monitors to dramatically increase capture rates. The lures contain the same aggregation pheromone, beta-lanquinone, that cockroaches release to call other cockroaches to the harborage. Trapped cockroaches release more of it, drawing in the colony. Wilhelm Homburg isolated boric acid in 1702. The USDA documented its insecticidal properties in 1922 under Department Bulletin 1153. The Joint Commission codified hospital IPM standards in the early 1990s. Every piece of this has been published in plain English for at least 30 years, in some cases for over a century. None of it is hidden. It just is not advertised, because there is no salesman walking door to door selling a $2 box of mineral salt with a 10-year residual life and no profit margin. The hospitals that solved this stopped chasing new chemistry. They went back to the principle Wilhelm Homburg published 300 years ago, the same one Howard documented in 1922, the same one the entomology departments of 3 major American universities confirmed across the 20th century. If the surface the cockroach walks on destroys its body, it does not matter what mutations it carries, what enzymes it has evolved, or how many generations of pesticide resistance are encoded in its genome. The chemistry failed. The physics did not. That is the answer. The powder is boric acid. It costs $2. It lasts 10 years in a dry wall void. And it kills by dehydration, not by toxicity. If putting buried research into one place is worth something, leave a like and subscribe. That is how this channel reaches the people it was built for. Now, the building most of us walk into multiple times a week, the grocery store, uses 4 invisible layers to keep mice and rats out of 40,000 square feet of stored food. One of those layers was developed by a Roman general in the 2nd century to protect imperial grain warehouses. One involves a steel mesh thinner than a human hair that lines every vent on the roof and stops a mouse from chewing through the building envelope. And one is something the cleaning crew does to the loading dock floor every single night that turns it into a kill zone before the trucks even arrive in the morning. That video is on screen right now.